So I just had a naked gun moment. I took the risk of going to use the restroom with my microphone on. And I was just really hoping that it wasn't turned on yet. So I wanted to talk just for a few minutes about what kind of problems we should be trying to solve. How do we know what efforts are the right efforts for us to focus on? My wife was a first grade teacher for many years. One of the responsibilities of a first grade teacher is to conduct a reading assessment of the students about 3 to 4 times per year. These assessments take 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. Now, the problem was there was no time actually allocated for these reading assessments. So the teachers were forced to find the time. So they had to pull kids out of lunch, pull them out of recess or other special events. And the kids were not happy about this, so their performance was challenged during that time. Also, the teachers, who only had about 45 minutes of free time during the whole day, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., now lost that window as well. So my wife went to her supervisor, to the principal, and said, this is unsustainable, right? The teachers can't do this. And what her response was, oh, come on, they take 30 seconds. What's the big deal? But they didn't take 30 seconds. They took 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. But she didn't know. Right? The principal missed the boat. Now keep in mind, this was a private school that prided itself on the quality of the education and the innovation, their progressiveness. But the principal totally missed the boat because she didn't know. She had never conducted a reading assessment herself. And she had never even watched a reading assessment being conducted. So in her mind, oh, it's 30 seconds, it's no big deal. She didn't listen. These are very challenging times that we're in today. Rates have increased at a staggering level. The economy may be on the brink of recession. Your volumes are down and margins have shrunk. Greystone is a very entrepreneurial organization, as we heard this morning, well capitalized. Entrepreneurial organizations are problem solvers, and we like to do things. We like to launch initiatives. But our greatest strength is can also be our greatest weakness. So how do we know which problems need to be solved? How do we know that a proposed initiative or solution actually solves any problem at all? Well, I have a secret for you. The answer is not in this room, probably. The answers are on the ground. We ask our originators to bring in more business, but how many of us have actually made a cold call? How many of us have actually tried to get a quote for Fannie, Freddie, FHA, Bridge, CMBS? Right? Have we actually gone through that experience to see how it feels to do that? We ask our underwriters and analysts to be more efficient. But how many of us have actually entered a number in an underwriting model? Some of us, probably not many of us. We ask our clients to transact with us, to keep their loans with us. But how many of us have gone through a document checklist and submitted 50, 75 different documents? This is not just a question about the right business initiatives to focus on from a business sense. I think it's actually critical to our culture as well. Because if we're a place where people matter, then we should solve problems that matter to those people. And so we have to understand what those problems are. So what we have to do is we have to really get to the ground. I read a book recently called Splendid, and I think it's called The Splendid and the Vile, by Eric Larson, about Churchill. Winston Churchill, in the middle of World War II, wasn't just holed up in his offices. He was going to the war front to see what was happening with his troops. How are his troops feeling? Right? His leaders would beg him not to go out. When London is being bombed, he wanted to go to the rooftops to see what was happening. Winston Churchill also would ride the subways to try to understand the sentiment of the citizens. He couldn't just trust what he was hearing from his second in command. I'll tell you just a couple of stories about this one, then we'll have a quick exercise. So the first is when I was starting G2, so we wanted to focus on underwriting efficiency. And I said, you know what, all right, we'll have an underwriter, but I'm not going to hire an analyst. I'm going to be the analyst for the first few deals, because I want to see what it's like to do that work. I figured, all right, I'll do this on the first 5 or 6 deals. I lasted about half a deal. And that's exaggerating. I probably lasted about half an hour. There was a part where you had to input the prepayment penalty schedule, and you had to calculate expected closing date, which is 45 days from now, plus 30 days, and then input this date to that date was 5%, this date to that date, and there was I felt so much pressure about how to make sure I got those dates right. And knowing that they were going to change, that I was like, all right, I can't, but I didn't know that, right? So when we talk about automation, AI, right, we have to know what we're actually trying to automate. What are we trying to fix? And you need to get down to the ground to watch people do that work, or do it yourselves to understand that. I met a woman a few years ago. Her name was Karen Hollinger. She was one of the senior executives at Avalon Bay. She's now I think a partner at KKR. She was responsible for digitizing the construction, the development, and the property management processes for Avalon Bay. So I went over to her after she had come down from the panel, and I said, how did you know where to start? Where do you start? That's a huge spectrum of things that you want to do. How do you know where to start? So I'll tell you a secret. I went and I worked the customer service lines for 2 weeks. Right? I answered phones. And I heard what the customers were complaining about. And I also saw what the challenges were of the people who were answering those phones. And after 2 weeks, I had my answer. It was clear what the path should be. Zappos is well known for their customer service. The late Tony Hsieh did some things that were very interesting. One of the things that he was known for is not hiding the phone number. Right? If you ever try to get a customer service person on the line, good luck trying to find the phone number to call. And once you dial that number, good luck trying to get someone online. Keep on pressing 0, 0, 0, right? And I'm sorry, many options have changed. But Tony Hsieh felt that was a critical component, is that customer service phone call team. And he required every single person in the company to spend 2 weeks a year answering calls, right? Including himself. He would just spend, it's like, get free time, all right, I'm going to the lines, I'm going to pick up calls. Because he viewed that, he said, you have 5 to 10 minutes of unadulterated attention, uninterrupted attention from the customer. We need to make the most of that. He didn't do customer service as a cost center, but that was where he learned. And it's interesting, he said he instructed his team that if a customer called for a particular shoe and they didn't have their size, he instructed the team to go to a competitor's website, see if they have it. And if they did, to direct the customer to that website. Right? Because it wasn't about the sale. It was about the customer and about the relationship. All right, so we're going to do just a quick exercise. So at each table, there's about 6 people. And because our time is limited, we're going to have half of the people be the talkers and half of the people listeners. We'll say the people on my left